Special thanks to Dr. Jyoti and Dr. Priti for having invited me here, and very warm greetings to Dr. Sharda ma'am. Very good afternoon to you, ma'am. So I think somebody else is controlling my slides from there. So can you just leave it at that so that we can start off? So the pathogenesis is still unclear. What I just wish to say is that there is a defective deserialization in the area of scarring, and this allows the placenta to the anchoring villi to directly attach themselves into the myometrium. What is recently noted is the presence of basal plate myometrial fibers, which are seen on placental histopathology. So, if you were to send the pathology for histopathology, a placenta which was difficult to be removed, and if the histopathologist reports the presence of basal plate myometrial fibers, then the chances of recurrence in the subsequent pregnancy is little higher. The other reasons could be the PAS has also been found to be associated with uterine anomalies like bicornuate uterus, adenomyosis, etc., because there have been microscopic defects in the endometrium that have been noted. Some people have also noted it in early pregnancy as early as 16 weeks. So probably it is an indicative of the fact that there's something else that is playing as a causative factor, and the die is always already cast in such an early period of pregnancy. 80% of the placenta accreta spectrum patients are associated with some sort of scar in the uterus, and majority of them are associated with placenta previa. Next, please. Next. So this slide is basically to say that other than the fact that placenta previa is a risk factor, the cesarean section, we all know there is a scar, the chances of placenta accreta is increased. But when the two of them combine, the two placenta previa along with the previous cesarean section, the chances are greatly increased of having PAS. So if there is a placenta previa in even the primary pregnancy, the chance of placenta accreta spectrum is 3%. These are in percentages. So this is 3 versus 0.03 when there is no placenta previa. So this is just to again highlight to say that placenta previa, there is something else that is playing in, and this is also a reason for improper implantation. Next, please. Next, Ajay. Next. Yeah. So screening and diagnosis, it's important to see the history. Those risk factors have to be identified along with ultrasound. Ultrasound today is taken as a screening tool. So the candidates at risk are the ones who have any of those risk factors along with placenta previa and something about the maternal serum alpha fetoprotein. Now, it has been found to be higher in the women associated with PAS, though it is non-specific. Low level does not rule out the presence of PAS, but associations are seen. So there is more number of studies which are ongoing to see the degree of association. Confirmation through ultrasound is best done between 18 to 24 weeks. It is important to have a trans-abdominal as well as a trans-vaginal ultrasound to evaluate the placenta and the myometrial interface. And the accuracy of diagnosis through ultrasound is to the tune of 94%. Mind you, this is in the hands of an experienced ultrasonologist and somebody who has a good idea of the signs which are present on ultrasound. Next, please. So what are the ultrasound features? So the most important one are the presence of multiple vascular lacunae present within the placenta. So as you can see in the two slides, just adjacent to that, I don't know whether you can see my cursor. So there are those vacant spaces which are found inside the placenta, and this is characteristic of the placenta accreta, some sort of morbidly adherent placenta. Then there is disruption of the bladder line. This is the line between the uterus and the bladder anteriorly. So a disruption of the line is indicative of an morbidly adherent placenta. Then there is the loss of the hypoechoic zone, that is the loss of the Nita-Busch. There is some sort of a interruption of the Nita-Busch membrane. So the hypoechoic zone between the placenta and myometrium is lost, and Also associated with that could be a reduced thickness of the myometrium. When it is less than 1 millimeter, it is indicative of morbidly adherent placenta. Extension of the placenta into the myometrium, cirrhosis or bladder, can take place. But the sensitivity of ultrasound is improved with the presence of Doppler, presence of turbulent lacunar blood flow, which is the most common finding with Doppler, and along with increased subplacental vascularity, gaps in the myometrial blood flow. And if you were to find the vessels which are bridging between the placenta and the uterus, these are also important signs on ultrasound. So the average sensitivity as per various studies, this was an important systematic review which was published in 2013. Sensitivity was 90%, specificity to the tune of 97%. Most common findings were multiple lacunae and turbulent flow on Doppler flow. And the accuracy improves with the a priori knowledge of the risk status. So the clinical factors, the clinical history of the patient, as well as an experience on ultrasound are extremely important to establish the diagnosis on ultrasound. So appropriate time, like I said, was 18 to 24 or 20 weeks. And another ultrasound, probably between 32 to 34, which is usually the time when the pregnancy is. Ajay, can we go back to the previous slide, please? So that is the best time to do the ultrasound because it is important for us to also understand the lateral spread, the degree, and most importantly, the upper limit of the placenta to be able to decide the abdominal incision on the skin as well as the uterine incision. So it is a good idea to probably have a look at the placenta, the placental mapping just before surgery to prepare oneself well to the various types of problems that one could face during the surgery. 3D ultrasound is under evaluation, but it's extremely promising. Next, please. Next. So there could be some confounders. These are normal. So this is a normal ultrasound. This is a normal placenta with a single venous lake which could be present. So the various factors here. So the various factors which point against the placenta accreta is the absence of other lacunar spaces that are there, and there is a clear hypoechoic zone between the myometrium and the placenta. And the next slide, the next image is that of partial. It's a partial hydatidiform mole, which shows the presence of multiple lacunar spaces, but there is absence of the fetus. There is no fetal hole that is seen. Next, please. Next slide, Ajay. So a lot of people of late have been, investigating through MRI. Is MRI really a good tool? The recent evidence shows that the MRI does not have an edge over the ultrasound. Sensitivity is again 94, specificity is 84, almost as comparable to ultrasound for the diagnosis. So what are the diagnostic features? So if you were to look at the images so the conservative approach could be uterine preservation or the expectant management. Uterine preservation means removal of the placenta later on and with the consent for removal of the uterus. So the uterine preservation is basically a technique which can be considered for focally adherent placenta. Here what is done is removal of the placenta is done by manual extraction, or it can be done through hysteroscopy. There have been various techniques which have been tried, and the procedure is called as extirpation. Again, I have a video which I wish to show. So this again, let's see that at the end of the presentation. Then there is something called the en bloc removal of the uteroplacental area, which is called the triple P. This was a very good study done by Dr. Arul Kumaran and his entire team. And today, a lot of studies have been undertaken with very good results. So we will talk about this triple P too. Then what people have also tried is removal of the placenta followed by insertion of the Bakri balloon. And they could prevent hysterectomy to the tune of 84%. So this has also been found to be of great use. So this was the extirpation procedure where this was a very good paper which was presented from Turkey. So what they did was after removal of the baby, they instilled 20 units of oxytocin through the umbilical vein into the placenta with 200 cc of saline, which was warmed up. So after that, they clamped the cord and then through saline irrigation, they did hydrodissection of the placenta and removed it from the myometrium. So primarily it is it can be used where it is basically an adherent placenta and not gone into too much depth. So the early stages of increta, or primarily it is for accreta. And they could avoid hysterectomy in 44% of the patients when they undertook this procedure. So what is the triple P procedure? The eligibility criteria is when the clearly delineated area of morbidly adherent placenta is known, adherent area is less than 50% of the anterior surface of the uterus, accessible border of the healthy myometrium is present, fundal or posterior placenta accreta is there. The basic technique is removal of a small bit of the uterine tissue containing the focally adherent placenta, and it is removed en bloc along with oversewing of the bleeding areas. So why is it called triple P? So it is perioperative placental localization and fetal delivery, followed by pelvic devascularization. And there they used the balloon catheter, and now it is no longer advocated. People even talk about undertaking hypogastric artery ligation, and followed by, in case there is placental non-separation, removal of the en bloc part of the uterine wall, the placenta, and reconstruction.
Radhika ma'am,
This is called as
Dr. Radhika ma'am, sorry to interrupt.
and in all they have done 4 cases, and they had come out with a publication in 2012. So now we are in 2020. So a lot of studies have already been done with good results. So they had done sterilization of all their 4 cases. Limitation is when there is lateral extension of the placenta into the broad ligament.
Ma'am, please make it full screen, ma'am.
So this is the procedure of triple P. So myometrial incision is above the level of the placental insertion. After having delivered the fetus, there is en bloc removal of the myometrium done. Now the point to be noted is that there is 2 centimeter of the myometrium, healthy part of the myometrium which is left intact, and then this is how finally the uterus looks like, and this is reconstituted back again by oversewing. So outcome of a retrospective study 2010 to 2017, number of patients were 50. The blood loss was about 400 to about 7.3 liters. This was in case when there was the placenta was deeply infiltrative. Injuries were much lower, 2%. Urological injuries, median duration of hospital stay was about 4 days. Arterial thrombus was seen in about 6%. None of the patients ended up having a peripartum hysterectomy. So what is the expectant management? So we all understood that this is basically when the placenta is left inside. This is especially so when there is extensive placenta accreta spectrum, ligated cord and the placenta are left in situ. In a large series of 167 women, they found that only 22% required hysterectomy. 78% of these women ended up without a hysterectomy. 50% were primary failures at less than 24 hours. 50% were delayed failures more than 24 hours after cesarean section. Majority reasons for hysterectomy was hemorrhage. 14% of these women had sepsis. 6% mortality was there, basically because of infection, and they had delayed hysterectomy. The median time for the placental involution was 13.5 weeks. Important takeaways was the reasons for failure. When the surface area or the depth of invasion is more, we can understand that the chances of failure is more. So placenta percreta is associated with higher chances of failure rates, 44% compared to 7% in the less extensive defects. Adverse complications are higher in percreta. Subsequent pregnancy rates have been found to the tune of almost 70%. A word about methotrexate as an adjunct to the expectant management. Now it is no longer recommended because we know the mechanism of action of methotrexate is basically on the rapidly proliferating cells. And what is seen is that in the third trimester or in the later weeks of pregnancy, there are hardly any rapidly dividing cells. So not much use, but hematological and nephrological toxicities are the limiting factors. So it is no longer greatly recommended because the risks outweigh the benefits. Hysteroscopic removal of the placenta at a later date there is limited data available, but people have done that, especially following second trimester abortions with good results. And people have combined HIFU, that is the high intensity focused ultrasounds, with hysteroscopic resection, and it is still under trial. Potential candidates are the ones who want to preserve their infertility but who are fully informed and are also agreeable to hysterectomy in case of injury to the adjacent organs during, the hysteroscopic procedure or in the presence of hemorrhage. So the ones who are unable to accept this sort of a thing are not the right candidates. So now what are the non-conservative mechanisms? There are today two types of hysterectomies which have been greatly become popular because of the challenges which are present because of the lateral spread of the placenta. So one is the Selman's technique, that is cesarean section through the pouch of Douglas, and the other is the retrovesical approach into the lower uterine segment through the it is also called a bypass because one approaches it from the lateral windows. So what is done in the Selman technique is, see, this is basically for an anterior placenta accreta spectrum with minimal lateral spread. A posterior retrograde approach is done. So if this is the location of the placenta, so after the baby is delivered, the cord is ligated and the placenta is left in situ, hysterotomy is closed and the ureters are identified. These authors, they followed this up by bilateral internal iliac ligation. What we found in our experience was, if you were to deliver this uterus after having closed it, you abut it nicely against the pubic symphysis and exteriorize the uterus. This has the advantage of kinking the uterine vessels and greatly reduces the bleeding. And also, the biggest benefit is we wish to approach through the pouch of Douglas. So this helps in creating space posteriorly for easy approach to the POD. So after exteriorizing the uterus and making it extremely anteverted and pushing it against the pubic symphysis, you approach the pouch of Douglas. So you insert, the assistant inserts a sponge holder through the POD, and an incision is made in the POD, and one goes all around along the vagina in the anterior direction, followed by ligation of the uterine vessels, and then one goes from below upwards in the space between the uterus and the bladder. So the reason is majority of the invasion of the placenta into the bladder usually occurs around the just below the dome in the base of the bladder. So along the ridge as well as in the trigone, the area is relatively free. So you approach from there, go upwards, and then reach the peritoneal fold, and that is very nicely shown on the in the video, which I'm presently not able to show. So let me try it at the end of this talk. So we go all around. Okay, so the vesico-uterine space is dissected from below upwards till the lowermost extent of the bladder invasion is reached. Because the uterine vessels are now ligated and majority of the dissection is done, one can quickly separate it by sharp dissection in case the bladder has been invaded. One can consider even doing an elective cystotomy and then remove a part of the bladder wall which is densely adherent with the uterus, with the uterus through the because of the invasion by the placenta. This we have had the experience of doing in about 4 or 5 cases, and with very good results, because once you open the bladder, there is no need to be scared of opening the bladder. Reconstruction is quite simple. So the advantage is you are able to see the ureteric openings. So just apply the clamp and remove the bladder wall along with the uterus. So then the hysterectomy is completed. So this was the video. The drawback is in case there is a large uterus and the suboptimal exposure of the cul-de-sac could be one of the problems. And the posterior, see, once you open the pouch of Douglas, the traction of the cervix is through the posterior opening. So if once one starts doing that, because of the low-lying placenta, the tissues could be friable and could result in avulsion and lot of hemorrhage. Ureteral injuries are possible if you were to undertake in the constrained space, especially the hypercoagulation. Ureteric injuries are definitely a possibility. In the retrovesical lower uterine segment approach, segment bypass, this was by Pelosi and Pelosi, and they had talked about this procedure way back in 1991. Still very useful, very well practiced. So what is done is after delivering the baby, one goes through the lateral aspect. Here, the broad ligament is open, the round ligament is ligated. They had also initially proceeded after ligation of the internal iliac vessels. But what we found was you could just simply clamp the round ligament, open the broad ligament, anterior leaf of the broad ligament, 2 centimeter lateral to the uterus at the level of uterine vessel. And the bladder could be distended with about 300 cc of methylene blue. Blunt dissection is then carried out from the lateral to the medial aspect, where it will distend the bladder to see the upper limit and also see the paravesical fat and the lateral limit of the bladder, go in the retrovesical space, that is basically in the extravesical space, along the paravesical fat coming medially, identify the avascular space, go upwards. Again, we are going from below upwards, like we did in the previous procedure, identify the plane of attachment of the bladder with the placenta, and then do the further dissection. So this is also extremely useful, very simple to perform, because majority of the times we would have done this, people who do undertake vaginal surgeries following a previous cesarean section or non-descent vaginal hysterectomy, we know that there could be additions. So we do understand this anatomy very well, going from lateral to medial, identifying the avascular space, and then going from below upwards. So the placental tissue is excised, conserving as much of the bladder as possible in case one has had to open the bladder. The bladder's defect is repaired and the uterus is removed. So the good point is that, again, one doesn't have to go very lateral. One is just, between the bladder and the uterus staying medial. And it obviates the need for a more distal arterial control, and the relatively easily approachable avascular paravesical space can be developed. A word about vault closure. It is important to take good bites, at least of about 1 centimeter depth of the upper vagina. And the peritoneum has to be picked up along with the vagina to close the posterior dead space, and thereby achieving good hemostasis with placing running sutures or figure of 8 absorbable sutures. So what is the outcome of delayed hysterectomy? So this, we had been doing that for a few years in the past. So especially in emergencies, when patients come in a very, very bad shape because they would have bled at home, they start bleeding on table. So you keep the placenta inside. So what they did was the delayed hysterectomy outcomes was published recently in 2017 at a median duration of 41 days following cesarean delivery. So this had certainly an advantage of reducing the blood loss. Average blood loss in a primary surgery was about 3.5 liters versus 700 cc in the delayed hysterectomy, and this was associated with reduced bladder as well as other visceral injuries. So delayed hysterectomy, leaving the placenta inside, certainly a good option, but then the patient should be under follow-up. She should be aware that there could be untimely bleeding. There could be reasons for emergency hysterectomies. Sepsis is certainly a possibility, as we had understood from the previous slide. So one has to see the risk versus benefit. But in case there is chances of maternal mortality in the primary surgery, it is a risk worth taking to have the hysterectomy delayed at a later point of time. So if you were to ask me what would be the best time, so we have been undertaking surgeries anytime between 1 week post-operative to about 6 weeks post-operative. So now we are in a position to advocate early hysterectomy, maybe between 1 to 2 weeks after the primary cesarean section, because that is the time when removal, of the placenta, everything, the vasculature has reduced. Placenta is in the process of undergoing involution, and the sepsis chances are much lower. So the patients, most of them recover very well. What about the unexpected pass? Procedure remains the same. Problem is, one should not get confused between a scar dehiscence and the presence of a placenta accreta syndrome. This is the only thing that I wish to highlight in the unexpected appearance of the uterine bulge in the lower part. Now, the classical diagnostic feature of placenta accreta syndrome spectrum is the presence of these vertical vessels which are going from below upwards, okay, which are transversing the lower uterine segment along the bulge. Whereas in a scar dehiscence, these kind of classical vessels are not seen. So this is simply the bulge of the placenta through an opening of the scar. So the placenta, both of them, they appear blue, but the direction of the vessels and the amount of vascularity is quite different. Management remains the same. Avoid manipulation of the uterus and extrauterine sites. And in case you are not prepared, the experienced surgeon is not available, just keep the uterus warm, cover it with warm saline packs, call immediately for help, arrange for more blood components, and if possible, transfer the patient to a tertiary care center if she is not already there. And the presence of an experienced anesthetist is also, we all understand, is extremely important. So this was the grade by grade management of the see what is happening is this, my entire slides are getting, yeah, so now it is fine. So what is the FIGO recommendation regarding the management? So if it is focal or diffuse grade 1 anywhere in the uterus, manual extraction of the placenta may be attempted. And if a distinct cleavage plane is found, then it is better, if it is a small area, say about 1 centimeter, you can remove the placenta and then apply those hemostatic sutures like the toe sutures, or you could have figure of 8 sutures. Take deep stitches to completely close the areas of bleeding, hemostatic sutures, or people have also gone ahead and done intrauterine balloon compression. In case it is focal, this is this is increta, that is focal grade 2, followed by percreta, that is only staying within the uterine serosa. Total resection, like we understood in the triple P procedure, large chunk of the uterine wall along with the placenta can be removed along with closure. And this is only the case if there is no invasion into the cervix or into the parametrium. Anything beyond that, anything which is diffuse grade 2 or going outside the uterus, hysterectomy is the method of choice, and it is important to review the hemostasis. Hysterectomy could be interval or it could be delayed. Partial myomectomy, if the patient is extremely motivated, wants to retain the uterus, but does not completely apply, it is completely contraindicated when there is a lateral extension, because myometrial excision or resection in the lateral part of the uterus is just not possible. In grade 3 or grade 3A lower uterine segment with the prenatal diagnosis, now is there a role of ureteral stenting? Not great advantage has been found, but FIGO says that consider placement of the ureteral stents and instilling the bladder with a colored agent, that is the methylene blue, could be tried. Peripartum cystectomy with partial cystectomy is certainly a possibility. So we all know that the complications are very high. That is why we get extremely worked up when we see a placenta accreta syndrome. So the median blood loss could be anything to up to 3 liters. Transfusion could be entire change of the total body volume. More than 10 liters could be required in up to 40% of cases. High chances of urological injuries, bladder injuries up to 50%, ureteric 18%, admission to the intensive care. Then there could be surgical site infection to the tune of 30%, 32%. Reoperative rates are high. Maternal mortality to the tune of 7%. So it is important to know of these complications, and also during the time of counseling the patients and the relative, it is important to sound them regarding these complications and take a proper consent. So I would like to conclude by saying that knowledge of the risk factors for placenta accreta syndrome, antenatal imaging, and diagnosis by ultrasound is extremely important. Combination of prior cesarean with current placenta previa should alert the clinician. Ultrasound is a very important tool in the experienced hands for diagnosis of placenta accreta syndrome. Elective surgery definitely gives better results. Conservative interventions are still under research but can be opted for on case-to-case basis. Complex hysterectomy should only be undertaken in tertiary care centers with multidisciplinary team in the hands of an experienced surgeon. So I thank you all for a patient hearing. So this is the cool, the waterfalls in this extremely hot weather. So sorry for the hitches which were there during the course of my talk. And if everybody is interested, we can go ahead and see the video, or if there is a time constraint, we can keep it for a later time. So, Dr. Deepti, can you just let me know how you are placed, how
We
comfortable
will see
you
the
are.
video. We will see the
I
video.
would like to see only the retrograde hysterectomy. It is a very short duration slide, so I can show you that. Would you like to see the retrograde hysterectomy?
Yes, why not?
Ajay?
Your
Hello?
visible, ma'am, visible. हाँ, yes, ma'am, visible है आपका video.
Yes, Dr. Radhika, we can see.
Hear me? Is everybody able to see the surgery?
Yes,
What they have done is they have done a hysterotomy followed by removal of the baby, closure of the hysterotomy. The authors are going ahead and doing an internal iliac ligation. We don't, in our case, in the numbers that we have done, we don't do a routine internal iliac ligation for all cases. So after having ligated the internal iliac vessels, the utero-ovarian ligaments are ligated, and then they go straight away into the posterior fornix, which is opened. And then they go all around. So this is the vagina which has been opened.
Yes.
Ureters have been identified much earlier at the time of internal iliac ligation. So go on serially applying the clamps all around. So this is the vagina that is getting incised. The uterine vessels have been now ligated. So now they are going from below upwards.